Joining me now is Deputy Executive Director for the Institute of Public Affairs, Daniel Wild. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Let's start with the situation in the Middle East, because we've seen now 3 female hostages released as that ceasefire deal comes into force. But even until the moment Hamas handed over the women, they used it as a moment to torment them even further. Have a look at this. Daniel, Israel has clearly had no choice but to do a deal with the devil here. And as we've seen, Hamas's full barbarism is on display again.
Well, that's exactly right. I think this ceasefire deal is to be welcomed, and hopefully it holds and develops into a broader and sustainable peace in the region. But certainly since October 7, I think it's just been gut-wrenching to see what's been happening on not only in the Middle East, of course, but also on our streets here in Australia, whether it's in our cities and the so-called protests that we've been seeing, or on our university campuses, and the lack of leadership we've really had on the domestic front from our government and from law enforcement to deal with those issues. And, of course, Israel was attacked on October 7. It has every right to defend itself and to respond in a manner that it sees fit. It is our most important democratic, or the only democratic ally we have in the Middle East. So, look, let's hope that this ceasefire holds and develops into something much broader. But as you rightly say, right up to the very last minute, we're seeing this kind of behaviour, which just demonstrates the vital need to make sure that our government gets this right.
Well, I'm not sure if they are getting it right, because we've seen Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister has really taken the Attorney General Mark Dreyfus to task during his visit over there to apparently try and mend relations. Sharon Haskell said she, quote, "I emphasised our deep concern regarding the shocking rise in anti-Semitism in Australia and the clearly ineffectual response from the Australian government and state governments. There is no doubt this has been caused in part by the Australian government's ongoing campaign against Israel. I expressed my expectation and hope that Australia's policy toward Israel will return to reflecting our long-standing relations based on shared values and interests." Daniel, it's very clear by that despite Mark Dreyfus earlier saying he'd been warmly welcomed in Israel, I just think the horse has bolted. Is it too little too late?
You're right. Yeah, the horse has bolted, and it goes back, like I said a moment ago, to October 7 and how the government failed really to respond and to deal with the issues in Australia and the anti-Semitism that was rising very quickly since then. And it's created a sort of permission structure within which this behaviour has been allowed to take place. I would say I would caution, any sort of foreign or overseas politician from intervening. If there's one thing Australians don't like, it's to be sort of meddled in by foreign politicians, regardless of what side you're on. So I would caution against going too far down that line. But certainly the sentiments that this Israeli politician has expressed are clearly, well within the bounds. So, look, I think that the government just needs to make sure that they respond in a much more clear manner. And it's a bit of smoke and mirrors, I think, what we're seeing in terms of sending Mark Dreyfus over there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Now, let's talk about Channel 9 host Tony Jones, who has issued a full apology to Novak Djokovic after making these on-air comments. Have a look.
Novak, he's overrated. Novak's a has-been. Novak, kick him out. Boy, I'm glad they can't hear me.
Now, those comments offended Novak Djokovic so much he decided to boycott Channel 9 and even refused a post-match interview at the weekend.
Thank you very much for being here tonight. I appreciate your presence and the support, and I'll see you next round. Thank you very much.
Now, it's prompted this swift apology from Tony Jones.
The comments were made on the news on the Friday night, which I considered to be banter. I considered it to be humour, which is consistent with most things I do. But the Djokovic camp was not happy at all with those comments. Now, as such, I immediately contacted the Djokovic camp and issued an apology to them, so this is 48 hours ago, for any disrespect that Novak felt that I'd caused. And as I stand here now, I stand by that apology to Novak.
Daniel, I don't understand personally what was so offensive about those comments. To me, it was a bit of banter or was a bit of a joke. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll take your point about the larrikinism that you made earlier as well. We don't want to lose that. But old chompers Tony Jones has copped a backhander from Novak, and he's very quickly backed down on this. And look, I think one thing that people like about Novak Djokovic is he does speak up. He has become a bit of a polarising figure, but we saw during COVID and everything that went along with that, he wasn't afraid to speak up, regardless of what you thought about his views. And I think most people will respect that. So he's done it again here, and I think he's well within his rights to, if he is offended or on behalf of the relevant community, to call for an apology. Fair enough. I sort of share your perspective. I don't think there was anything too offensive about what Tony Jones said. But it just goes to show, I think, whenever you're on camera, you've always got to be a little bit careful with how you sort of handle these things.
Yeah, whenever you've got a microphone on, be very, very careful what you say. That's the lesson to be learned for all of us. Now, here we go again, Daniel, because Australia's classification board is seeking cancel culture powers, would you believe, to censor old movies, books and TV shows in line with modern community attitudes. The federal government agency wants to reclassify publications every 10 years, saying it needs new powers to reclassify archaic and out-of-step movies, books and TV shows that no longer align with the current guidelines or community standards. Daniel, I don't know about you, but I would like to know what these people believe are actually in line with community standards.
Yeah, that's right. There's a pattern of behaviour from this government of censorship. I think it's the most anti-freedom of speech government we've seen in peacetime era. We saw that with the censorship throughout the Voice to Parliament debate. We've seen it with their proposed misinformation laws, which were ultimately defeated, but I suspect they'll bring it back if they get back into government. So, look, and also this is straight out of the George Orwell playbook, trying to rewrite history. It's important that things stand on their own accord and people can judge whether they think it's right or wrong or indifferent. If you're offended by it, then turn it off and don't watch it. Of course, community expectations and behaviour change over time, but it's not the job of a current government to go back in time and censor previous films or any kind of publication. You're literally rewriting history, and that's got no place in a free society. So, like I say, if you're offended by it, fair enough, but don't watch it. But we can't have governments rewriting history and engaging in that kind of censorship.
Correct. Don't watch it. If you're perpetually outraged, if you're offended, don't watch it. Why should the rest of us have to suffer for the minor few who are always constantly got something to say? It really, really annoys me every single time. Now, look, let's turn to the US because Penny Wong, as we know, is going to Donald Trump's inauguration and is suddenly on some sort of a media blitz of sorts, saying all sorts of warm and friendly things about the next US president. She told ABC Radio the other day that it is a great honour to be invited to the inauguration of Donald Trump and that she's confident she'll be able to work with him. Now, I've got to say, it's quite the turnaround. Back in 2021, she said, we've seen somebody, a leader in recent times, who was prepared to trash alliances and partnerships for personal political interest, and his name was Donald Trump. Daniel, why the sudden change of heart to rush and kiss the ring?
Wow, yeah. I think that Senator Wong is a day late and $1 short. You can't, I mean, this just underscores the critical importance. You've got to take your role as Foreign Affairs Minister or in the shadow capacity of that very seriously. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. America is the single most consequential and powerful nation on earth, full stop. Economically, culturally, militarily. And we need to have adults in the room. I think a lot on the left never understood Trump. They never understood his appeal. They never understood why people would vote for him. And they did not think he would ever win in 2016. And they certainly didn't think he would win again this year or in the election last year and going into the presidency this year. Because, look, they live in an echo chamber. If they had been watching Sky News, if they had been informed about it, they would have seen, well, actually, Trump's got a very good chance of winning. So I think it just underscores that this government is not prepared for what is a dramatically changing geopolitical circumstance, which is being led now by Donald Trump.
Well, you've got Albo saying once that he was scared of him. You've got Kevin Rudd calling him the village idiot, Penny saying this, and now all of a sudden they're all trying to be best mates. It's just, it's actually quite funny. Daniel Wild, nice to chat with you. Thanks so much for joining me on the show this evening.